A key Badgers basketball target pushes back his decision. Is that good or bad? Plus, the quarterback room without Nick Evers. Do the Badgers need to go and get another guy? I'm going to tell you why I don't think they need to. Locked on Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, the goal of the show is just to create a better way to be a Badger fan, a better enjoyment of being a Badger fan, and we're doing that together, so I appreciate it very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Post your job for free. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, so I had this whole thing planned out because I thought we were going to get Frankie Fidler this morning, and then we would just go live after. We'd talk about it. We'd be jacked up about it. What a way to start a work week, right? What a way to start a Monday. Frankie Fidler, the Badgers basketball target, kind of a small forward coming out of Omaha. Badgers been linked to him for a while. And then he delayed his announcement. Like he was going to have it this morning at 9 a.m. Central. Or no, wait, 9, I think 8 Central is when he's going to have it. It was this morning on Omaha radio, and he delayed it. Doggone it. By the way, that's like the worst thing that could happen, because there's a chance here. Let's start with, is that good or bad, right? Him delaying the announcement. It's bad. It's not good, because the Badgers have to find answers, and other players on the transfer portal are going off the board. And this is a guy the Badgers zoomed in on right away. They targeted right away. They have a connection with Chucky Hepburn. The more this drags out, now there's two things here, but the more this drags out, I think this is the worse it gets for the Badgers, because more blue blood start to get involved. He just came off a Michigan State visit. It's not a great sign when he had kind of a time frame set up, and then he goes and visits Michigan State and then says, I'm going to push it off a little bit. That means something's come up that's made this more difficult, right? And that's if it had been Wisconsin, it probably would have been Wisconsin sooner. I don't know. It feels like him delaying it is not a good thing for the Badgers. The one good side to it, right, and the one thing that the Badgers still have in their corner, the one ace up their sleeve, whatever you want to call it, is Chucky Hepburn. Right, he really wants to play with Chucky Hepburn. The two are really good friends. They want to play together. They played together in high school. So the longer this drags out, the more Chucky Hepburn will just stay in his ear too, and that's something that a Michigan State doesn't have, right? I'm trying to think of the right word, but the afterglow of a visit to a Michigan State is going to slowly fade a little bit, and then Chucky Hepburn is still going to be in his ear, still going to be in his corner. But I got to be honest, like it doesn't feel great that it got pushed off, that it got delayed. That feels like not a great thing for Wisconsin, whether it's an NIL thing, whether it's Michigan State made a huge impression, whether it's the home schools made a bigger impression. Then I don't know. It felt for a while like this was Wisconsin's to lose. And if that's the case, you would think a decision earlier than later would have benefited the Badgers. Mitch James says somebody offered big money. Possible. Brett McDonald says it's supposed to be today, right? This is bad, right? Yeah, I don't think it's great. There's another thought that's been in my head. And I apologize for my voice a little bit. But there's another thought that's been in my head where people have talked a lot about this is a huge offseason for Greg Gard, right? Huge offseason for Greg Gard. And I've been thinking about it, and I was like, man, I think every offseason is now a huge offseason, right? With the way the portal is structured, I think every offseason is a huge offseason this point forward, because every offseason you're going to be fighting for your roster. And every offseason you're going to have to comb through 300 transfer guys, and you're going to have to re-recruit your guys, and you're going to have to ensure your NIL pod is up to par. Like every offseason is now a big offseason. There are no more, you can't have any more off seasons. Like I think it was the 2018 recruiting class that had basically nobody in it, and you struck out. You can't do that anymore in basketball. Every off season is a big off season. All right, oh, excuse me. All right, let's talk about what else is going on with basketball. This roster, Brandon Angel is the other big target out there, right? So ideally, what you do, you get Fidler and you get Brandon Angel. And that wraps it up, right? I think that's an incredible home run offseason. What if you don't get one of those two? What if you just get one of those two, right? Which even that's not a guarantee either. But let's say you just get one of those two. What else has to happen internally on the roster? What else has to happen? There's 3 players that could step up, right? 3 players that could step up that make it a little less imperative that you land those guys. One of them is Nolan Winter, right? Nolan Winter averaged 9.4 minutes per game last year. I think it's pretty fair to assume that's going to jump to 15 or 20, right? Because essentially you're replacing 56 minutes between Tyler Wall, AJ Story. You're replacing 56 minutes of game time. Well, if you get one guy that comes in, let's say it's a Brandon Angel who could be that 4, and then you get Nolan Winter who steps up, and then you get John Blackwell who steps up, and you get Daniel Freitag who comes in and plays right away. Maybe it alleviates some of it, and then maybe you can just go and get another kind of 3-and-D wing. Caleb J. Haas says, so if we don't get Fidler, what does that say to the other portal targets? I don't think they're connected. Listen, it's not going to look good on Greg Gard if you had an in with a guy like this. You were the perceived favorites, and you end up losing out to either a homeschool, to a Michigan State. That's not going to look good for Greg Gard. Here's the other thing, and this is why I said this is not. I kind of started with this. This is not a good thing for the Badgers. You kind of have to start pivoting. Like, keep the full court press on Frankie Fidler for sure, but you can't be left with no Brandon Angel or no Frankie Fidler. Angel is visiting Duke. There's blue bloods after him. There's not a guarantee you get either, right? So if you got to start pivoting, you need a plan B. You cannot be left with both those guys going somewhere else and you have nothing. That's going to be a disaster. So I don't know where that pivot is. You got to pivot to it, though. You got to start working backup options, because there's a chance you don't get either. There's a chance Brandon Angel goes blue blood, and there's a chance Frankie Fidler goes Michigan State or stays home. You had damn well better have a backup plan if you're Greg Gard, because if you don't, if you miss out on those two guys and your backup plan is a single and not a double or triple or home run, this roster is in trouble. And I think that's kind of where I'm getting to on this. Like, that's where the delay hurts, right? Because the longer this delays, if you don't have a backup plan and you end up losing them, you're kind of left holding the bag. And that has been one of the things we've talked about in the past with Greg Gard, where he doesn't always have that backup plan lined up. So it's a big one. We're going to talk about that more coming up. I also want to talk about Nick Evers, the quarterback room. Why I don't really think they need to go out of body necessarily. I know some people have talked about that. I'm going to give my thoughts on that one coming up. But first, we're going to take a quick break from our friends of the show over at LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the number one source for all your hiring needs. If you're a hiring manager, listen, we know this. This is a show we talk about recruiting a lot. Quality people matter, right? Quality people. Like, the people in this community are quality people. Quality people matter. You've got to find the right people to fit your jobs. That's what LinkedIn is here to do. Every new hire can feel like a high stakes wager, and you've got to be 100% certain that you're getting the right people in the door. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's something I've used. It's something my company uses. Right now, there is a great offer. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to for free. Post your job for free. FREE at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions to apply. Again, it is the number one professional hiring platform for a reason. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Post your job for free. Get the right people in the door. That's what LinkedIn is there to do. All right, let's talk Nick Evers, and then I want to take your comments. I got some comments queued up too from a previous show that I thought were really interesting. So the Nick Evers era, huh, guys? That went well. Here's the thing. Nick Evers came in. He was kind of that opening salvo, right? Like that first big transfer of the Luke Fickell era, and somebody who really got us excited, and he should have, right? Former 4-star quarterback, Oklahoma guy. He brought a type of pedigree that I think across the nation people raise their eyebrows, right? And that's, people want to play, receivers want to play with high-profile quarterbacks, running backs want to. He brought a certain juice when he came in, when he committed. I remember talking to John Garcia Jr., who was at Sports Illustrated at the time. He said, yeah, that's the type of move that raises eyebrows nationally. But the thing you got to remember, in the portal, this is going to be much more the new norm. We're going to get people and lose people without ever making really much of a ripple on the depth chart. And it doesn't mean he wasn't a good player. It just, the fit wasn't there for Evers, right? It wasn't there and never got there. And I've talked about this on the show. I'm as soon as he came in and he was behind Miles Burkett and he was behind the walk-on that ended up going somewhere else. I forget his name. Was that I can't remember his name. I said it like, I don't think he's going to play here. I don't think you come in as a 4-star quarterback, those type of athletic tools, and you get that far down on the depth chart and you end up making that up. Not in the transfer portal era, right? I'm going to be rooting for him. I will say this. He has crazy physical tools, and I think he handled everything the right way, right? You never heard a peep about Nick Evers being disgruntled or being a problem in the locker room, or he never went on social like some other players have and maybe trashed certain aspects or complained. Like, he handled it the right way. But I think I'm not that stressed about it. I'm not that bummed about it, only because I didn't think he was ever going to play quarterback here to begin with. I think he got too far behind, and him and Longo just couldn't seem to figure out the best path forward for him for playing time. And it wasn't going to close with Braden Locke getting more and more reps as the number 2, maybe the number 1. That gap was only going to get wider, right? They're in the same class of eligibility, and Locke is getting all the reps. So I think this was always going to happen. This was always going to happen. This is going to happen in other positions too. Like I talked about it before, don't be shocked if in 2 years out of this 3 running back class that we brought in, 1 of them's here and 2 of them are gone. Maybe Atuka's here and Dupree and Jones transferred, because that's how this is going to work more and more. You're going to get guys in that you're excited, then you're going to lose those guys. Now, let me talk about the quarterback depth chart a little bit, because I've seen a lot of discussion, a lot of talk about, man, we got to go get another body. We're a little light there. This is what I'll tell you, and this is kind of what I've been thinking. I don't think this really changes the depth chart much, because I don't think they were ever that comfortable with Nick Evers to begin with, and I don't think he was ever really going to play to begin with. So you kind of took out a body that they didn't believe in. So I don't think you need to bring in another body, because I don't think he was a factor in the depth chart to begin with. Right now you've got Mordecai. I'm sorry, not Mordecai. You got Van Dyke. You got Locke, right? and then you got Metor, and then Cole LaCroix when he gets healthy. Is that light? Yeah, that is kind of light. But if you look at it from the standpoint of you removed a body from that room who they didn't believe in and probably wasn't going to play, it doesn't really change the functional depth chart, right? It changes the depth chart on paper because you lost a body, but functionally he wasn't going to play anyway. And again, I'm not saying that's on him or it's on the Badgers. I don't think it hurts the functional depth chart that much. Do you need to take 2 bodies in the 2025 class? I don't think so. I think when you start taking 2 bodies, you run the risk of losing one. I think you run the risk of running one guy off. Maybe you look in the portal, right? Maybe you can find a portal guy who has experience at a lower level and just wants to be in a bigger college environment, right? Who can at least take handoffs and who's thrown some passes in live action. Maybe that's what you do at the quarterback depth chart. But those guys are hard to find too, right? Who are you going to find that's going to come in and say, no, I shouldn't say that. I really shouldn't say that, because I do think that there are probably lower level quarterbacks who aren't playing for the NFL who may want to come in and be a part of a bigger program. But then how much is that guy going to help anyway, right? Probably not much. So it kind of goes back to my point is I don't think you need to immediately scramble to replace the depth chart, because, hey, who are you going to find? Like, seriously, who are you going to find that's going to come in and make the depth chart better right now, who also isn't going to compete for a starting spot? You're not going to find that dude. So I don't think you need to do that. And then secondly, I don't think they believed in Nick Evers anyway. And I think internally, they probably had already written him off the depth chart, if you know what I mean. So if they weren't scrambling to find more depth before, after they remove a guy that they probably didn't really believe in, they don't need to scramble to find depth now, right? Because I don't think it really changes the depth chart in their head very much. All right, let's get a couple comments here. Brett McDonald says depth at quarterback is fine. TBD, Big Lock, LaCroix, Mabry, soon to be Little Lock. I agree. I think ideally you want another body, but this isn't like break glass and go find another quarterback immediately. I just don't think this is a case of that. Mitch does point out LaCroix hasn't been practicing. Yeah, that dude can't get healthy, unfortunately. Craig Kendrick says Evers needs to go to a MAC school, get some tape in his last year so he can move up to a Power 5 school. I'll be very curious where he goes. I bet you he doesn't go to a MAC school, Craig. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad decision. If you hear my kids screaming in the background, I apologize. I'm not saying that's a good or bad decision, but I bet you he doesn't go to a MAC school. I bet you he finds a Power 5 school, because here's the thing. Evers is very much like, if you guys are baseball fans, I'm a baseball fan, you know that. Evers is very much like the high school pitcher who throws 99 miles an hour, right? And can't find the strike zone. But because he throws 99, people keep giving him a chance, right? The big programs, the baseball teams will keep giving him a chance. He'll keep getting shots. Evers is going to keep getting shots at high levels because he can run a 4.5, he's 6'4", and he has an arm. Right? You know, those guys just don't grow on trees. So he's going to keep getting opportunities because of the type of athlete he is. I'm not saying he shouldn't go to a MAC school to get automatic reps, but I bet you he doesn't. Adam Otto says, we struggle getting athletes because we can't use them. The way Garendo was handled with the previous staff was criminal. Now we can't find out how to use a guy like Evers. Embarrassing. Adam, you and I know, man, I am all aboard the Garendo train. Like, the fact that we couldn't find reps for, oh man, I'll die on that hill. The fact that we couldn't find reps for a guy who is 220 pounds and runs a 4.35, unbelievable. Like, but I think Evers is a little different. Now, I did say last year, and I still think this is the case, you probably could have found a package for him near the goal line. You probably could have found a package for Evers, right? But it is much easier, in my opinion, to find 5 to 10 reps for a super athletic running back during the course of a game than it is to install a package for Evers. And I think as easy as it is for me to say install a package, right? You should have installed a package for Evers. You should have found a way to use them. I think that's a lot harder functionally in a practice situation where they're trying to get all the other pieces aligned, where they're trying to still install their system. It's still year one. It probably to them, because there's only so much practice time you get, right? And they talked about it. Year 2 is going to be a lot better because year 1 is still installed. Probably to them, a better use of practice time wasn't designing a package for Evers, who, quite frankly, they didn't really believe in. It was probably more about, we need to get our fundamentals set. And that's where the practice time went. And I get that. So I do agree with you, Adam. Like, the Isaac Grendo thing is criminal. I'm not as crazy frustrated about them not finding a package for Evers, just because I think that takes more time and it's harder in a practice setting. Mitch James says the way Longo used quarterbacks in UNC, he knows what works. Yeah. Bo Dragon says it's feeling like it's Locke's team for the next couple of years. Man, if the two of them are close, right? When I say the two of them close, I mean Braden Locke and Tyler Van Dyke. Who would you start? Now, this is an interesting discussion too, because if they're close, you can make the argument that if you start Tyler Van Dyke, then you keep Braden Locke, right? Braden Locke will stay and the depth is better. And if they're close, though, Braden Locke has a future here and Tyler Van Dyke doesn't. So there's a very real argument that you say, well, I'm going to start the guy who can continue growing in this role, but that means you could lose Tyler Van Dyke, and then the depth becomes really sketchy. I don't know. It's an interesting question to me. Badger Boardman says, trust the staff. Here's where I would go. I would go, well, first of all, quite frankly, I'm just going to, whoever's better, I want them to start, right? I don't want them to worry about Tyler Van Dyke could transfer if you don't start him. I don't want them to worry about Braden Locke is not getting reps for the future. Whoever is better needs to start. And if that means that Braden Locke is better and Tyler Van Dyke transfers, oh, well, like, you got to play the better guy, period. And if that means Tyler Van Dyke leaves, here's my argument. If he wasn't good enough to beat out Braden Locke, I don't know how much of a ceiling he raises anyway. So I think you got to start whoever is better. And if that means that somebody leaves, so be it. But here's the thing. If you start Braden Locke and Tyler Van Dyke says, peace, I'm going to hit the portal, then you also have time to go get a backup quarterback in the portal. It doesn't mean that your depth chart stays fractured for the entire year. That means, okay, now we can go get somebody. The Grogan says, I think we had a quarterback because if Locke starts and TVD walks. Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, if Locke beats out Tyler Van Dyke and he's the starter, I bet you Van Dyke leaves, but that's okay. Like, it's okay to lose. He would essentially be a backup quarterback. It's okay to lose a backup quarterback and then go get someone else in the portal. So that's what I would do. I would just start whoever's better, and I wouldn't stress. I wouldn't stress about, does this mean Tyler Van Dyke's not going to start or not going to stay, or does this mean Braden Locke's not getting reps for the future? You have to start whoever's better. That's the meritocracy. And if it means Locke starts and Tyler Van Dyke leaves, oh, well. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. Bo Dragon says if Van Dyke can't beat out Locke, it was a complete whiff. See, I don't think so. Like, I understand the premise of the point, but here's what to say about quarterbacks is you just got to bring in bodies. You got to bring in guys. And I I'm not going to fault the staff for bringing in like a big armed quarterback from Miami. And maybe Locke beats out Tyler Van Dyke because Locke took a big jump this offseason. We've talked about it a little bit. I know he's got bigger and stronger. Maybe Van Dyke is the guy they think he was going to be, and Locke has just gotten better and has closed that gap on what Van Dyke is. So I think there's something there. I still, at the end of the day, I still think Van Dyke is going to be the guy. I think he's going to win out, but I don't know if that makes it a whiff. Bo says, I'm talking about the talent evaluation. Yeah, I think that's fair. There's certainly other quarterbacks in the portal that you didn't take because you took Tyler Van Dyke. I think that's a fair point. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back with just basically your comments. I got comments queued up from a previous show that I really like, some of your comments in the chat. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers, but first, a quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel remains the number one source for all your sports betting needs. That's who we go to. That is the official betting book of the Locked On Network for a reason. It's because it's fast, it's simple, it's easy. Basketball playoffs are here. If you're betting on the Bucks, go do it over at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 on point spreads, money lines, parlays, whatever you want. $200 bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, NBA playoffs starting. Baseball's in the full swing. There's a ton to do over there. Futures, parlays, teasers, spreads. It's all available on FanDuel, FanDuel.com/lockedon. And it is a great spot. If you're just trying to liven up the sports weekend a little bit, make sure you do it responsibly. But the user interface is simple. It's easy to get started. FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, let's get some of your more comments in here. I definitely had some thoughts queued up from a previous show I did. This is from Steve Oakey, who feels like I'm being overly critical of the football team this year. Ryan, do you like any positions this year? I like plenty, Steve. Here's the thing. I think receivers are going to be good, right? I've just made the point that I don't think we have an elite boundary receiver yet. I think running back's going to be really good. I have no real issues with the running back room. I'm one of the highest guys you'll find on Chez Malusi. So I think running back's fine. I think linebackers are going to be really good. I've just made the point that the defensive line might negatively impact them. I think corner is going to be pretty good too. So yeah, I like plenty of teams, Steve. I like plenty of positions. I just don't necessarily love depth on the offensive line. Listen, quarterback could be an issue again this year. I don't love the defensive line. And I think special teams is kind of a weird spot too. So I don't know. A lot of questions to answer, but I think I like some of the positions. Let's see. Lee Herschel says, O-line is critical this year. Must get to the portal. If the O-line is good, this will be a fun year. O-line is huge this year, and they're not. Listen, they were so lucky health-wise last year outside of the Renfro thing, which obviously has a big deal, but both the tackles stayed healthy, guard stayed healthy, Huber stayed healthy. You're probably not going to have another year health-wise quite like that. And if somebody goes down, who's the next guy up? So I think portal, which is opening up here. We saw Nick Evers announce it's opening up today. Yeah. So what do the Badgers need? What can they do right now in the portal? I don't think they're going to be hyperactive, but if they could go find like a swing tackle, maybe an interior guy, man, that would be huge. If they could bolster the depth, you're not looking for a star on the offensive line. Obviously, you take one, but you're just trying to bolster the depth. If you can go find another dude who you can be comfortable plugging in if somebody gets hurt, that would be an enormous win for this team right now because depth on that spot is really, really low. I mean, honestly, I think depth on both the lines. And that's a scary thing heading into a season, right? If somebody tells you I'm a little concerned about the depth on the offensive line and the defensive line, if you want to temper expectations for this football team, that's where I would start, right? So if they can go in the portal and get somebody on the offensive line, I think that'd be huge. David W. says the Badgers will beat the teams they should and lose to the teams they should. I thought this was really interesting because who are the teams the Badgers should beat now? And again, this isn't me being overly critical, but that used to be Northwestern. Who beat us the last couple of years? Northwestern. It used to be Illinois, right? It used to be a lot of teams that we always used to say the Badgers will always beat these teams. We have lost to those teams recently. So with the new Big Ten and with the Badgers' kind of recent struggles over the last 3 or 4 years, I don't know if this applies as much anymore about the teams that the Badgers should beat. They kind of have to re-earn that right? The Badgers kind of have to become that team again that beats all the bad teams. And that's what, for so many years, this team was built on. This team under Brett Bielema and Paul Christ, they would every year beat the 6 or 7 or 8 teams that you knew they should beat. And then they would kind of split with the Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State group. We got to get back to that point, because now I don't know if there's a bunch of teams you look at the roster and say the Badgers should beat those teams. They kind of have to re-earn that, in my opinion. All right, let's keep going here. A couple more. This is from Scott M., who's down on the quarterbacks. He said, I'm going to sell on the quarterbacks. Like someone said earlier, a battle between a fifth-year senior who has been demoted multiple times and a redshirt sophomore tells you we are not there. Yeah, there are two ways to look at this, right? Either this is kind of a quarterback battle because Tyler Van Dyke is coming in and he's not quite what they thought he would be, or it's a quarterback battle because both these players kind of took a step up, right? And I'm not sure if we really know. I'll just say it. We don't know for sure yet, right? Even people who are at practice. People who were at practice last year were gushing about the receivers and the offense and how great it was going to be. And then what happened, right? And that's no knock on anybody. I was talking about how great it could be too. That's not me knocking anybody. That's me saying it's too early in spring to make that declaration if we're in a good or bad spot at quarterback. But I get Scott's point on this. I get the potential concern here for sure. Bo asks, what kind of dog do I have? I have it's a Great Pyrenees and a Golden Retriever mix named Tundra. She's awesome. Bo also says quarterback is already an issue, 100%. Brian Shetty says, I actually like the idea of Locke beating out TVD. Shows to the team that the guy that performs will play and nepotism will not play a role. I love that point. I absolutely love that point. You need a meritocracy. And if first of all, the players know. Like, we've all been around sports. A lot of us have played sports. The players know, right? If Braden Locke is better than Tyler Van Dyke and he doesn't start, the player is going to know that. And they're going to know it's probably because maybe Van Dyke got a promise in the portal, maybe because the optics of bringing in a transfer, they're not starting, and whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You got to play the better quarterback. And again, if that means Tyler Van Dyke ends up transferring, That's okay. Like that's completely okay because you're starting the better quarterback. And by the way, you're starting a quarterback. There's a real upside to that. Now, the downside is your depth takes it, but there's a real upside because if Braden Locke is better, he's going to keep getting better. So a year of reps now is only going to propel him into next year and the year after that. You could have, I know everybody loves Mabry Metor, and I do as well, but there's a scenario where you have like 6 straight years of locks on the quarterback spot, right? If Braden Locke wins it, he might just keep that job until Landon Locke gets here, and then that might be Landon Locke's job. I don't know. There's a possibility. I'm not saying it's likely, but there's a possibility. Smo says, what are the odds Mabry is still on the team after 2 years? Don't see him sitting as the number 2, his redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore seasons backing up Locke. That's exactly what I'm saying, Smo. Like, there's a very real chance if Locke starts this year, it's going to be hard to unseat him next year. And then the year after, he's going to be a redshirt senior with 3 years of starting experience. Like, and that might not be a bad thing. I think people are underselling Locke and what he can do and how good he can be. I really do believe that. I think because he's not the physical prototype, there's a lot of guys who aren't physical prototypes who turn into damn good college quarterbacks, who turn into damn good pro quarterbacks, right? I wouldn't undersell it. I wouldn't undersell Locke if he ends up winning. I wouldn't raise my hands and like, oh, now we're stuck and we have no ceiling. I don't know. I wouldn't be so quick on Locke. Anyway, appreciate everybody joining in. We were going to do a live show if you missed at the beginning on Frankie Fidler and the decision and hopefully joining Wisconsin. And that's why we kind of did this live show today. And then he ended up delaying it. So more on Frankie Fidler. We'll find out where he goes. Again, I don't think quarterback depth is greatly impacted by Nick Evers leaving, even though I really like Nick Evers. I like the physical skill set. I'll be cheering along, but I don't think they need to go find another body. And I don't think it's a big deal if Braden Locke wins the quarterback battle if Tyler Van Dyke transfers. So on Wisconsin, we will definitely talk more later. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and have a great Monday.